the most interesting part of the Witch King, I think, definitely comes out in the Return of the King, and that's where you can most clearly see him commanding the armies, right? And I mean, so like first off, I think the most interesting situation, between him and Gandalf, which is, I mean, it's not a huge difference between what happens in the books at Minas Tirith and what happens in the Return of the King movie, but it's interesting thinking about. Okay, at in the book, really the Witch King and Gandalf don't do much. The Witch King says a couple words, and I think his like sword flames up in the book, and then like after that point, because he hears the horn, he flies off.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the books, the Witch King is actually on a horse and he enters the gate.
Oh,
Right?
really?
He's the first person to enter the gate rather than the trolls.
Oh, interesting.
And therefore, like the other Nazgul were flying on the winged. I forget the name of them.
The fell beasts
the
kind
fell
of things.
beasts.
Interesting.
But he came through a horse and he was going to enter the city, and he was sort of like Gandalf was standing there at the gate preventing him from entering the city, and he was going to beat Gandalf. And then he hears a horn and he turns around and gets out of there because he wants to go face the Rohirrim instead. So I think it's actually interesting because I think the movie does it like obviously as an action set piece. It's not that thrilling or entertaining, but you get sort of a better idea of like a thrilling and entertaining, right? Those trolls busting through the gate, and you're like, oh, this is so much more intense. You have to set it that the city's under like serious attack because they've broken through the gate. But yeah, much of the same things are said. His sword ignites in flame. He's like, you failed, the world of men will come. The world of men is over.
Yes.
Or what's the specific line? I'm going to get it. The world of men will fall, right? And then he hears the horns. I think it's interesting, as we talk about like the Witch King, especially too, that like Sauron was sort of like the enemies of all the free peoples of Middle-earth, but the Witch King specifically was like the enemy of the men, right? It was sort of his job to like oppose the men, and you see that he is the most powerful effect on mortals. So you think of like whenever him and the other ring race are chasing down Frodo and Sam in actually the Shire, right? Frodo and Sam are saved by this like group of elves that's coming through, and they're not really struck. Their Witch King's most powerful weapon of all the Nazgul is like fear, right? They strike this hurt like fear in the heart of the men, but this doesn't have really effect on the immortals, which is interesting throughout the story. So I think it's like interesting to see like what Tolkien thought of as like what are men's most like largest flaws, or what is like the most evil thing to us. It's like this sense of fear and dread and hopelessness and death in I think many ways. And it's sort of like telling that it's an undead wraith in many ways. We didn't mention his act as like the leader of Minas Morgul. Again, you see like he set up his kingdom in Angmar to oppose the kingdom of Arnor, sorry. He set his kingdom up in Angmar to oppose the kingdom of Arnor, but then he goes and sets his kingdom up in Minas Morgul and actually takes down the kingdom of Ithilien, and then goes on to be like the opponent of Gondor. So like he's constantly the enemy of like the free peoples, the free men of Middle Earth, and he like he is known for like torturing and killing some of their kings and stuff. So yeah, he's like sort of has his guns trained on like Aragorn and his bloodline and any descendants of his. So
yeah. And wasn't Minas Morgul? Wasn't that originally some like fortress or tower from Gondor?
Actually, whenever the exiles from Numenor come to Middle Earth, and I wonder if we'll see this in the Rings of Power, or if the show will end with Numenor. But when the Numenor's exiles come, Elendil sets up his kingdom in Arnor in the north, known as like the strongest kingdom. And then Isildur sets his kingdom up in Ithilien, and his brother Anarion sets his kingdom up in Gondor. And, the kingdom in Arnor eventually falls due to, the Witch King. And Ithilien is overrun very early on in the story, before the last alliance of elves and men. And Isildur escapes the fall of Ithilien and his castle, Minas Ithil, and he flies to Gondor, and then, the last alliance of elves and men happens. And both Elendil and Anarion are killed with the last alliance. And he sets up his kingdom in Gondor, or actually sort of dies on the way back. But he sets his kingdom up in Gondor, and that's where he rules from. But Ithilien was originally actually Isildur's kingdom. So it's a big, like, sort of insult to them that, like, the Witch King is literally ruling over the city that Isildur founded. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, what do you think of the Witch King breaking Gandalf's staff at Minas Tirith. Do you think that Gandalf isn't powerful enough to like go up against that, or?
Yeah, I think it's this interesting thing that like whenever you think of Tolkien's magic system, it's not a hard magic system; it's a soft magic system, right? A character sort of is powerful, and that power sort of like comes and goes. It's not really meant to have really specific rules, and so I think it's this idea that like their power is connected to like hope, right? And it's like this idea that like the hope is running out, and therefore Gandalf's power is running out, and therefore the Witch King is at his most powerful because the city is hopeless and under sort of his control, and his army is there. So this magic isn't like something apart from the rest of the story that like people can. It's like a part of the story, right? That like the sense of impending dread is on the Witch King's side, and therefore I think he's able to overwhelm Gandalf at that moment. Pretty clearly, Gandalf like wins at other moments. He fights 5 Nazgul by himself on Weathertop,
right,
before he's Gandalf the White, and is able to drive some of them back whenever what's his face, Faramir is fleeing from Osgiliath, and therefore like I think pretty clearly it's like about where they are in that moment. It's not that like the Witch King will always beat Gandalf in every situation or something like that.
Right, and it's not like. And of course, basically, like Peter Jackson kind of like extrapolated on that whenever he put that into the movie. It's like that doesn't actually happen in the book.
Yeah, so that's also important as well. That they seem to be evenly matched in the book, maybe more than. But I think it's sort of fitting because the story is sort of there, right, where it's sort of hopeless whenever Gandalf gets his staff broken, and sort of hopeless in the books as well.